All right, if you're gearing up for the Real Estate Appraiser board exam, I bet you've got your eye on Republic Act 9856, the REIT law. It's a super crucial topic, and today we're going to crack it wide open. We're breaking down exactly what you need to know straight from the law itself so you can turn those tricky exam questions into easy points. Let's get started.
So, here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with a quick timeline, then get right into the core definition of a REIT. After that, and this is the important part, we'll dive into the crucial rules you absolutely have to memorize for the exam. We'll also meet the key players in the game and wrap up by making sure you've mastered the lingo. Think of this as your personal study roadmap.
First up, the timeline. Now you might be thinking, why do I need to know the history of it? Well, trust me, understanding how this law came to be gives you some really important context, and it helps explain why REITs are suddenly such a big deal in the Philippine market.
Okay, now look at this slide for a second. The really interesting thing here is that massive gap, right? The law was passed way back in 2009, but the very first REIT didn't actually launch until 2020. So what happened for a whole decade? Well, the key, the real game changer, was that 2020 BIR regulation. It got rid of some major tax hurdles that were holding everything up. So for your exam, just remember, 2020 was the year this whole thing finally came to life.
All right, let's move on to the most fundamental question of all. Getting this definition right is the foundation for everything else you'll see on the exam. If you really get what a REIT is at its core, you're already halfway to answering a bunch of questions correctly.
So let's just ask it directly. It's a term we hear all the time, but what's the official legal definition? The one you absolutely need to know for the board exam.
And here it is, the official definition. A REIT is first and foremost a stock corporation. That's key. And its main purpose? It's pretty simple. To own real estate that actually makes money. You know, think shopping malls, big office buildings, or hotels. It's basically a company that lets everyday people like us invest in huge properties just by buying shares.
Now this right here is a super critical point, and it's a potential trick question on the exam. The law itself goes out of its way to clarify that even though the word trust is in the name, a REIT is not a trust in the classic legal sense. It's a corporation. Don't let them trip you up. A REIT is a corporation, full stop.
Okay, this is where you need to really focus. Get your highlighters ready. This next section has the hard numbers, the specific, testable facts that are almost guaranteed to pop up on your board exam, so pay very close attention.
First up, the magic number, 90%. A REIT is legally required to distribute at least 90% of its distributable income to its shareholders in the form of dividends. This is the main reason people invest in REITs, that consistent, reliable income. You have to remember 90%.
Next up, 1/3. To make sure a REIT is truly a public investment and not just a private club, the law requires that at least 1/3, or 33.33%, of its stock must be owned by the public. This keeps things fair and open for everyone.
And the third big number you've got to know, 300 million pesos. That's the minimum paid-up capital needed just to start a REIT. It's a pretty high bar to clear, and it ensures that only serious, well-funded companies can get into this game. 300 million. Okay, let's pull all those key rules together on one slide. You've got the 90% dividend payout, the 300 million peso minimum capital, and that 1/3 public ownership rule. Oh, and there's one more little detail on that ownership rule you need to know. A REIT also has to have at least 1,000 public shareholders, and each of them has to own at least 50 shares. This slide has all those key numbers in one place. Seriously, screenshot this for your final review. So a REIT doesn't just run itself, right? There's a whole team of key players making it happen, and understanding who does what is super important, especially since one of these roles is directly connected to what you do as an appraiser.
This table breaks it down perfectly. The sponsor is the one who gets the ball rolling, putting in the first assets. Then you have the fund manager, who makes all the big investment decisions. The property manager? They handle the day-to-day stuff, keeping the buildings running. And then, and this is the big one for you, the property valuer. That's an independent appraiser hired to figure out the fair market value of the properties. See? Your role is literally written into the law.
All right, we're in the home stretch. Let's move to our final section, mastering the lingo. To really nail those exam questions, you've got to speak the language of REITs. So let's quickly go over the essential terms you're pretty much guaranteed to see. Here are the big four. Distributable income. That's the magic number that the 90% rule is based on. It's the profit that has to be paid out. Deposited property is just the total value of all the assets the REIT holds. The net asset value, or NAV, is just assets minus liabilities, a super important health check for any REIT. And finally, income-generating real estate is the whole point of a REIT, property that brings in regular cash.
So, as we wrap things up here, if you walk away with nothing else, please burn these 3 things into your memory: the 90% dividend rule, the 1/3 minimum public ownership, and the 300 million peso minimum capital. These are the absolute keys to cracking the REIT questions on your exam.
And I'll leave you with this final thought, just to get you applying what you've learned. As a future appraiser, when you look at a building, an office tower, a big mall, what specific things would make you say, yep, that's a perfect asset for a REIT? Think about stable income, location, tenant quality. That's how you start thinking like a real pro. Good luck with your review, and go crush that exam.